Now, usually in these videos, we just go through and look at 15, 20 dynasty trades, pick which side of the deal that we like, and talk about the overall value of those players. Now, of course, we will be looking at some real dynasty trades at the end of this video, but I want to more so focus in my mind, what makes a winning dynasty trade and what we should try to accomplish in May and in June. This is a completely different period of the season where we should have a different goal than where we're going to be at in October. But before we get to it, make sure you drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and of course, if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football and want to get my rankings, the rankings to all your favorite content creators, plus an in-depth podcast breaking down your Dynasty team by yours truly. You can find all of that on flockfantasy.com, plus so much more premium content. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 2-day free trial, 30% off any subscription, and yours truly will go through and make that podcast breaking down your dynasty team. But I think that should be it. Let's go through and let's dive into what a winning dynasty trade looks like. And I don't want to just come out here and give you some theories and say, okay, if I was going down hypothetical roads, here's what I'm trying to do. I also want to pull up realistic baselines that we had from this time last offseason. So what I went ahead and did is I pulled up DLF ADP from last June, and we are going to be looking at what we had with the top wide receivers in dynasty drafts and comparing that to what we are currently looking at. Now, in general, this is going to be the overarching move that I am trying to make in dynasty leagues. I am going to try to take a high up asset, an asset that has a premium associated to its value, move down the ladder, pick up a player that is viewed as a lesser option, plus an additional 2024 first-round pick. Now, of course, this is much easier said than done, but I want to go through and I want to outline exactly why this deal would have worked last year, the year before, the year before, the year before. And in general, if we're thinking about wide receivers outside of the very top end guys, right? I mean, of course, if you're looking at Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, if you're looking at peak Devontae Adams, those players are going to give you such a massive edge that it's going to be damn near impossible to ever get fair value for those guys. But outside of that, if you're looking at a low-end wide receiver 1 in fantasy and comparing that to a high-end wide receiver 3, in reality, the raw points per game gap that you're going to get between those two players isn't really that large. And at the same time, historically speaking, we have a very difficult time figuring out who is going to be that low-end wide receiver 1 versus that high-end wide receiver 3. So while we sit here in June, and if you sell, say, the wide receiver 14 in ADP, right? And in return, we're getting back, say, the wide receiver 26. Maybe in theory, we're selling a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1, and getting back a wide receiver 3, where in reality, that could flip so quickly, and you never really know who's getting the better player. Of course, it's more likely than not that the guy who's valued higher is better, but it's not a guarantee. Like if we're going to go through and look at wide receivers in ADP last year that were outside the top 20 overall picks, you had Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, Tyreek Hill, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, all there inside the top 30 picks overall, right? So, I mean, that's the range where you're not looking at those guys that are viewed as truly elite level assets. We're not sitting here and viewing the Justin Jefferson, the Jamar Chases of the world. We're going a tier down to these guys that are low end wide receiver 1s in Dynasty. And if we're going to look at the high end wide receiver 4s, low-end wide receiver 3s, those guys that are like wide receiver 30 to 36, you're looking at a list of Cortland Sutton, Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks, Jamison Williams, Devonta Smith, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Allen Robinson. Now, of course, there are some massive busts on this list, right? I mean, I can't sit here and say, okay, well, yeah, if you traded Tyreek Hill and you got in return Allen Robinson, we're extremely happy with that. No, of course, you're not extremely happy with that. But when we're picking up an additional future first, we need to look at it in the overall picture. So say we were to move one of those guys at the top end and in return get that low end wide receiver 3, maybe high end wide receiver 3, an additional 2023 first, this deal wins so many times. Like say we trade Devontae Adams and in return, we're getting back Cortland Sutton and the 105, in 2023, right? Well, you're sitting here going, yeah, I mean, Courtland Sutton was horrendous. This definitely hurt my chances of winning this past year. But I mean, if we're reevaluating where we stand now and you're getting Jackson Smith-Njigba at the 105, hell, it was a massive win. Say you went through and you traded DK Metcalf and you got Chris Olave and the 2023 105. Not only are we picking up that extra first round pick for free, but on top of that, you don't know what's going to happen. You actually have that low-end wide receiver 3, mid wide receiver 3 going out there and being more valuable than the asset that we traded away in DK Metcalf. Say we sell Michael Pittman, and in return, we get Brandon Cooks in the 105. Yeah, I mean, Brandon Cooks doesn't really do anything, kind of sucks. But hell, if we picked up that extra first, that pick can be more valuable than Michael Pittman on its own. Say we go through and we trade Tyreek Hill away for Jamison Williams in a future first. Yeah, if we sold Tyreek Hill and got back Jamison Williams in like the 108, so now we're looking at Quentin Johnston and Jamison. Yes, you lost the deal. Of course, we would love to go back in that time machine and get Tyreek, but then what if you sold Deontay Johnson and you picked up Amon-Ra St. Brown in a future first? Like, I understand it looks like we're maybe cherry picking here. I understand that you're saying, oh my gosh, Mason, nobody would have ever made these deals. And that's why we went back. That's why we pulled up this ADP, because we always think that we are so smart in the moment. And we always think that you're going to be so right. And in reality, things can go sideways. And there is so much randomness in fantasy football that picking up that extra first round pick is such a game changer, and that you never know who's going to be better. And at the same time, you could always get bailed out depending on where that rookie pick lands. So I want to try to translate this over to what you're looking at with Dynasty ADP today. So, I mean, we're going to the same site. We're looking at ADP from this past month. We're going to be looking at guys that are right outside the top 20 picks. The guys we're looking at are Metcalf, Devonta Smith, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Jackson Smith-Njigba, DJ Moore. No idea why DJ Moore is this high in this set of ADP. But if we were to go through and if we were to start selling some of these players and picking up an extra 2024 first in a mid-wide receiver 3, yes, it sounds like it's a massive L, right? I mean, if we were to go through and if we were to say sell Devonta Smith and pick up in return Jerry Jeudy and a 2024 first rounder. It sounds like that's a horrible trade right now. We don't know how that turns out. If it's a super flex league and you're picking up that first rounder and it turns out to be the 103 and you bring in Drake May, you bring in Marvin Harrison Jr., that could be worth more than Devonta Smith straight up next offseason. And who knows? Of course, it's more likely than not that Smith is a better asset than Jerry Jeudy, but hell, looking at the list last year, I mean, while we thought it was very, very likely that Metcalf was a better option than Chris Olave, things always change. If we're going to go and look at another example of this, maybe you want to go through and maybe you want to sell, say, DJ Moore and get back in return Rashad Bateman and a 2024 first rounder. Maybe you want to go through and sell Cooper Kupp and get back in return, say, Amari Cooper and a 2024 first. Of course, on paper, it sounds like these are horribly bad deals, but I would always rather lean on the side, especially in a superflex league where those picks inherently are going to be a little more valuable, of picking up that extra first, because it can always bail us out if, I mean, hell, we did trade away the best asset. Now, pulling up some trades that we got from Twitter and the Flock Discord, we are going to have some interesting things to be looking at that fall in line. I know we had like 100 submissions, so I'm sorry. Obviously, we're not going to be looking at every single one, but I more so want to be looking at the deals that kind of illustrate the point that we're talking about and fall in line with this overall strategy. So the first one that we're going to pull up is going to be someone selling the 105 and in return getting back Jahan Dotson and the 106. So of course, this isn't exactly, say, a trade where we give up the best piece and then we get back a lesser one and a future first. We're getting a first round pick in this year's draft. This makes so much sense in that what happens out of the blue if Jackson Smith-Njigba at pick 6 ends up being a better guy than Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 5, right? Hell, and we get Jahan Dotson for free, or even if Jahmyr Gibbs is much better than Jackson Smith-Njigba, if Dotson takes that massive step forward going into year 2, you can win this deal by so many different ways. I mean, really the only way you win this deal if you're trading for the 105 is if Jahmyr Gibbs truly turns into a generational type fantasy asset. That's like the only way you win this deal. Now, going over to another one, I know this is a little more crowded, so it's tougher to point out, but this trade is Amon-Ra St. Brown for Michael Pittman and the 104. Yes, of course, you're also sending Akers in a third for Njoku in a second. The primary thing you're looking at is Amon-Ra St. Brown for Michael Pittman in the 104. And while, yes, it looks like Amon-Ra St. Brown is a way better dynasty asset than Michael Pittman, if you're picking up pick 4 and we're able to bring in CJ Stroud and you're able to possibly bring in Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Smith and Jigba, whoever you decide to take at that selection, you could have 2 shots that maybe either Pittman, which would be a massive surprise if he turns out to be a better dynasty asset than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not likely, but it's in the range of outcomes. Or that guy like CJ Stroud is worth more than Amon-Ra St. Brown by the time we get to next offseason. Going over to the next deal we're looking at, this one is kind of a similar deal at the quarterback position, right? Where here you're selling Lamar Jackson and in return you're getting back Tua and the 102. So you're going to have a shot with both Anthony Richardson as well as Tua versus Lamar. I don't know, how surprising would it truly be if you had, say, another injured season from Lamar Jackson where we see his dynasty value, go dramatically down for 3 straight injury-riddled years in a row. All of a sudden, Anthony Richardson comes out, shows that he can average 60 rushing yards a game, and all of a sudden he's a first-round starter pick next year. That's a possibility. It's also a possibility that Tua was the league leader in adjusted yards per pass attempt last season, and maybe Tua has that massive explosion. Now, our next deal is one where we're selling the best asset and trading down to get multiple. We're selling the 104 here, which is like CJ Stroud, which is, say, Jahmyr Gibbs. We don't exactly know who. But in return, we're getting back the 110, a 2025 first, DeAndre Hopkins, as well as Alvin Kamara. Now, this is not necessarily the exact type of deal that we are looking for, right? We're not getting back a piece that we can be very excited about in general. Like, what I would much prefer if this trade was maybe the 104 for the 107, the 2025 first and the veterans, there I'd be really happy about it, because I think it is a possibility that maybe whoever you would get at pick 6 and pick 7 could possibly outproduce what you're taking at pick 4. Pick 10 is a little bit different just because you're at the very, very sharp drop-off in tiers in your rookie draft. So it's very important, obviously, to know how those rookie drop-offs are. And pick 10 is not the best deal I'm looking for. Now, going over to our last one, I don't really know what to make of this deal. You're looking at selling Mark Andrews for Dalton Kincaid and a future first. Now, obviously, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, well, man, you know what? I really don't like this. I don't like trading for rookie tight ends. Historically speaking, it's almost impossible to see value accrue from rookie tight ends in Dynasty because these guys don't produce. It just doesn't happen. Once in a blue moon, you'll have Pat Freiermuth, and even when Pat Freiermuth goes out there and has a great year 1 and year 2, then still he's not going out there and dramatically increasing his own Dynasty value. So I don't love trading for rookie tight ends, but at the same time, if we're going to be fair, we can say, okay, well, what if that 2024 first round pick turns into the 104 and all of a sudden we're looking at the #1 running back in next year's draft class plus Dalton Kincaid, who knows what he does as a rookie, versus Mark Andrews. And of course, while we want to sit here and say Mark Andrews is going to be a stud, it's by no means guaranteed. So this is an example of a deal that I would be scared to make. But going back to look at a lot of trades from last year at this time when people were making similar type of trades, it's usually a pretty good move to be making. Now, let me know what y'all think of this. This is how I have tried to build my Dynasty teams over the past few years. This is the type of trade that I am trying to make every offseason because there are so many times where I'm an idiot and I'm wrong, and the player that I have ranked at 30 is a better asset than the guy I have ranked at 10 just the next offseason. And I think it's a very similar thing to a lot of other people in Dynasty, but people are way too confident in their ability to identify the exact player that they want and exactly how they will produce the next year. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. I really hope we're able to help you out. I really hope you're able to get something from this. And as always, please consider joining the flock. You can find the link in the comment section in the description. Sign up with promo code flock and you get 30% off any subscription. Get all of your favorite Dynasty creators of premium content. And on top of that, get a podcast breaking down your Dynasty team by yours truly. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, supporting the channel. Really do hope that you have a great day and really hope that we get to see you with the video tomorrow.